What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and this is Assetto Corsa, where today we're finally going to get around to driving the 91730. Sorry it's a little bit late, this video, but my pedals have been broken, so this is actually the first little while that I've actually had a chance to drive the car, and holy crap. I've been looking forward to this car for about 2 years now, since the Lotus Renault 98T was released in early access for this game, and I mentioned it. Yeah, that'd be really cool to see a car that's just this crazy, you know, even a step beyond that mid-80s turbocharged Formula 1 nutcase that is the 98T. And sure enough, I'm not taking credit for this at all, by the way, but sure enough, some modder was like, you know what, we're making a 91730. And it just so happened to be the Mecco, who's like one of the best modders within Assetto Corsa. And sure enough, fast forward down the line, this car has ended up being official DLC for Assetto Corsa once they got the Porsche license. So, sweet. This car is nuts. It's nuts. This is a car so crazy it killed Can-Am, a series where 900 horsepower cars were considered totally normal and not out of place. So let's begin. We're driving here at Riverside International Raceway by Lilski. He's the same guy who did Bridgehampton for Assetto Corsa as well, another historic American circuit. And much like this circuit, is sadly no more in the real world. I would highly recommend giving both circuits a whirl though, because they're a heck of a lot of fun. And plus, you know, that is one of the very cool things with sim racing. We can, you know, essentially turn back the time and race on tracks that don't exist anymore. You know, Bridgehampton is now a golf club, golf course. Don't know why I said golf club, but whatever. Country club. There you go. Saved myself. And then Riverside here is a, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. It's a mall. Yeah. And everybody who is remotely interested in racing and cars should definitely weep at the fact that one of the historic circuits here in the United States basically went away, bulldozed, in favor of a mall in California. I've never been to California, but I'm pretty sure they have more than enough malls there. Now, I have turned up the boost all the way. I've disabled mechanical damage because obviously we're here for the boost. I mean, that's the point. I mean, that's why you drive this car. So, to enable us to use prolonged amounts of boost, we have gone ahead and turned the damage off because everybody wants boost. And I love going through that corner at 185 miles an hour in fourth gear, and the engine sounds like it's lugging, sounds like you're bogged down. But then you look at the speedometer and realize, nope, speed's still increasing rapidly. We're all good. But this was the car that has been dubbed the Can-Am Killer because of how much power it had, how insane it was, as well as how incredibly successful it was because of both of those factors, as well as the guy driving it, Mark Donahue, who also did the development work of it. And basically, it was a car built for him by Porsche with his input to basically just destroy anything and everything in its path, which is why it got the nickname that I think is the best nickname in the history of race cars, as well as much better than the Can-Am Killer, the Turbopanzer. Because it's got a turbo, it goes really fast, and it's going to steamroll the competition. I mean, it's just perfect. Absolutely, certifiably insane. And yes, it only has a 4-speed gearbox. I'm sure somebody's going to be like, can't you use 5th gear? Nope. I can safely say this car ranks within a very small group of cars I would consider just stupidly challenging. And I say that in a good way, not as in, you know, oh, something's broken, you know, the physics aren't right, you know, this car shouldn't be so difficult to drive or anything like that. I mean, that is it's just, if you're going to want to be able to get the best out of this car, you're going to need to practice with just this car. You're going to need to learn it inside and out. You're going to need to spend a lot of time with it. Like, I'll be honest, there's a comparison here. I just want to say this. You know, frequently if you've read articles from like magazines and, you know, non-sim racing related places, you know, you'll often see Dirt Rally said to be the Dark Souls of racing games because it's so obscenely difficult. Dirt Rally ain't got nothing on this thing. Yeah, I've been driving this car for a few hours and I've yet to put in a lap that I'm actually like, yeah, I actually am pretty happy with that. And generally, I'll just tell you this, that is not even close to the case. Usually it takes me about 5 laps and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of on my pace here. I can find a couple more tenths out there, but not this thing. This is just so radically different than anything else. It requires a total recalibration. You know, the closest thing I'm sure people are going to point out, and as well as I guess is the only thing I can agree, but the closest car in sim racing that you might be somewhat familiar with, you know, excusing, you know, mods that are out there, you know, because I don't think there's really been a very solid, top-notch, well-known about Can-Am mod for pretty much anything other than Grand Prix Legends. But the closest thing, the closest baseline would be, you know, one of those mid-80s F1 turbocharged cars, you know, from when they had, you know, 1,200 horsepower and qualifying boost. 1,200 horsepower and qualifying boost. This one has 1,100 in race. But you have to then put the perspective into it that, you know, those cars are from 10 years later. A decade more tire technology, a decade more aerodynamics advancement, you know, a decade more technology with brakes. Because, you know, when you're going this fast, you really notice the brakes. Put it that way. I love that shifting animation. I don't think you would take one hand off the wheel while totally sideways in a car like this. I don't know about that, though. But, you know, that car, those cars, I should say, you know, speaking of specifically, you know, the 98T here in Assetto Corsa, it's like, it goes, it stops. It, you know, straightaways disappear because it just has so much power, so little weight. You know, it just goes insanely fast from point A to point B, but you have downforce, you have a lot of grip still. This thing? Nope. And it really makes it hard, especially when you consider the fact that the brakes really aren't nearly as good as on those cars. As well as the fact that because it's got so much power and it has so little weight, that anytime you go into a corner a little bit faster, a little bit deeper, you're adding significant amounts of, you know, entry speed onto the corner that you're going to scrub off. Which, you know, is a problem with, you know, every huge horsepower, no weight car around, but it's just another level when the brakes are this bad. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it there. Yay, realism, right? But all joking aside, wall tap. Elite drifting skills confirmed. Just a whole separate level of insane. And you might be saying, oh, well, yeah, you got the boost turned up all the way. So, of course, it's insane. I mean, yes, it is like a 400 horsepower swing between, you know, using the regular, normal, civil person boost and using the absolute nutcase insano level of boost. But let me tell you this, it doesn't get much easier. I mean, yes, it does definitely become a bit more manageable, but it ain't much. I'll tell you that much. Coming down to the left-hander here at the end of the straight, you're only doing, you know, 215 as opposed to 225, you know? It's like, yeah, you made a difference, but you didn't make a practical difference. It's still not easy. And that right there, I'm sure those of you guys who are paying attention notice that. I don't know if that's a bug with the car or what, and that would be the front end lift on this car is definitely insane, which allow me to go ahead and maybe explain, because I think there's a couple of factors actually at play. First of all, this car is, you know, from the early 70s, and while this car did have, you know, aerodynamic development time dedicated to it in an effort to you know, basically make as much downforce as it possibly could, that's also with 1970s technology, 1970s way of thinking, and what was known. So even though that was definitely a consideration, and they definitely had the power to power through any drag that they could, you know, ended up having, you know, it's still not something relatable to today in that sense. But there's that, as well as the fact that, you know, you just look at the car, the rear wing is absolutely massive, the long tail bodywork, the stubby front end. You know, it's not necessarily surprising, as well as the fact that the fuel, okay, as I mentioned, you know, for the 1974, the year after this car dominated, they implemented a rule in Can-Am where a car had to get 3 miles to the gallon, basically. Is also part of the oil crisis. Not Can-Am itself, but, you know, there's an oil crisis back then at that point in history, so kind of like today, everybody's wanting to be more efficient, more frugal, and yay, efficiency. Let's go green. Right? Yay! But because of the fuel consumption, you know, obviously the car would be very, very heavy with fuel, you know, especially at the start of a race, and it'd burn off throughout the race distance. For example, if I remember correctly, looking back at the setup page, the default setup for this car has like 150 liters of fuel. That's pretty crazy, considering most of the cars, you know, racing today carry 100 liters full to the brim, topped off. You know, that's kind of the standard within GT3, GTE cars, somewhere in that area. And that's not even a full tank. That's, you know, a third of a tank. So, you know, you can just imagine all that extra weight that would be loaded onto the car as part of actually racing the car. So I don't know. Yeah, you can see it. You know, you can see just how much the nose comes up and how much it understeers there. I'm not saying it's realistic. I don't know. You know, I've obviously never driven this car, but it seems like it could be something reasonable. It also does seem quite excessive. I don't know. Maybe from some of you guys out there who maybe got to see this car race in person. And I mean, you know, the real deal, full chat, back in the day, not historic racing, because I highly, highly, highly doubt anyone is fully pushing this car, especially considering, you know, the fact that the engines aren't exactly, you know, common off-the-shelf everyday occurrences that just apply or appear out of nowhere. Chances are you're not going to your local junkyard to find an engine for this car. But I don't know. It's an interesting quirk, I'll say that much. And yep, we're off. But man, oh man. It makes me happy. It puts a smile on my face. I don't know how you can't enjoy it. You know, just from a standpoint of it ends up going really fast, really quickly. Like, there's something about that that I think just naturally makes people want to giggle, maybe? Turn! Oh man, this corner is so tricky, so deceptive. It's tricky in any car, to be entirely honest, but with this car, you come up that little crest on that little straightaway, and the car just, you know, wants to bounce up, get air time. As that front end, especially as the fuel burns off, you can see it definitely is getting worse. But it wants to take flight. But then you gotta get on the brakes because, well, this car only knows one speed, fast forward. It's either fast forward or slow-mo, one or the other. Definitely getting squirrely. I mean, it's like racing a dragster. It just doesn't make sense, but that's why it's totally awesome. Except this actually worked. So hard to get on the throttle without lighting them up. It's almost like the nose comes up enough and then oops, grip slipped. It's like the nose came up enough and then it starts to, like, air builds up underneath it and it just gets worse and worse and worse really quickly. But then when you lift off the throttle, the speed comes down just enough that the nose just slams back down. And in case you're wondering, I have minimum rear downforce on this car currently, so yeah. Not a downforce imbalance issue that you're going to be able to fix. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and take the best lap I've run in this car. This my drive is just totally out the crapper. I'm going to take my best lap, put a replay, trackside, onboard, something like that at the end. But the rest of the Porsche pack I'll do a traditional video for. I just wanted to do one for this car itself because it's awesome. But so So anyways, roll on that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.